a saying in the military that surprises are for birthdays, because I had no idea that this was happening, and it is a great honor. Did y'all have that little video that I sent you?
Played it earlier.
Okay, can you put it back up there? If you can, because it's real important that we see that. And I just want to read something to you, and Representative Cason and Representative Tinderholt, I mean not Tinderholt, but let me find something here. Thank y'all for being here and future representatives. I want to read something to you. Because some of us in here, there were soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, we took an oath. And an oath is to the Constitution of the United States of America. And in the Constitution, there's a thing called the Second Amendment. It says very simply, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'm not a really smart guy. I used to jump out of airplanes, red light, you stay in the airplane, green light, you can go. And I was an artillery guy too, so I appreciate the Forward Observer comment. That's as simple as it can get. But yet we have to fight for this enumerated right that we have in the Constitution, but yet we have people right now standing outside, kicking on the doors of the Supreme Court for a supposed right to murder a baby in the womb. This is where we need to stand, this is where we need to fight. And so what I want to do is draw your attention to this little video here, because in this video, that was back in March of this year, that was down in Needville, Texas, at the little 25-yard range for a dear friend of mine, Marine Colonel Orr. And Marine Colonel Orr has Orr Tactical. And one of the things that he did for me, and I asked him to, was he built me a 9mm fully suppressed carbine rifle, semi-automatic. And you just saw me firing that rifle, no hearing protection. That rifle is still sitting down in Needville, Texas, because the federal government says I could not take it home because it has a fully suppressed barrel. Now, how is it that we came to the point that the federal government creates an agency that creates a rule and a regulation that infringes upon my rights? What is so different and what is so bad about that weapon that protects my hearing, having been a former artillery guy, that I cannot take it home? What is so incredibly onerous about me that I now, on top of already having to fill out a Form 4473 to get the permission to have that weapon, I have to go back and now get fingerprinted, I have to get photographs taken, and then I have to submit $200 to the ATF, and they will sit on that weapon, estimates right now 7 or 8 months, that I will not have that weapon in my possession. And that's happening here in Texas. And the other thing that you have to understand, here in Texas, in the last legislative session, we passed HB 987. And HB 987, which was signed into law by the governor, states that if you purchase a fully suppressed weapon or a suppressor system here in the state of Texas that's manufactured here in the state of Texas, you don't fall under the regulations of the federal government, because that's a violation of the Commerce Clause for them to come in and try to do exactly what they're doing to me, because the Commerce Clause says that the federal government is only supposed to regulate commerce between states, with states and other federal entities, governments, and with the Indian tribes. So here is a weapon. The manufacturer of that fully suppressed barrel is in Texas. The person that designed and built that gun is in Texas. And so here we have HB 987 that was signed by the governor, but yet my weapon still sits down there in Needville, Texas, that I may not see for 7 or 8 months. And as a matter of fact, as soon as HB 987 was signed by Governor Abbott, the ATF sent out letters to FFLs, federal firearms licensees all across the state of Texas, saying that if you try to bump up against this, we'll haul you in on a felony offense, which is the exact same thing they did in Kansas. And they did put an FFL in prison under a felony offense. See, we got problems here in Texas whereby this weapon, manufactured, built in Texas, I'm being told by the federal government I can't have it. I'm a law-abiding, legal gun owner. That's why we need the National Association for Gun Rights. That's why we need the Texas Association for Gun Rights. You know, maybe some of y'all have heard about this thing called red flag laws. And I find it very interesting that there's another gun advocacy organization that I used to be a board member of for 5 years. And they're having their convention here in the state of Texas, down in Houston. They have invited to speak at their convention a United States Congressman, Republican from Texas, that is for red flag laws. Yeah, Representative Crenshaw. And furthermore, they're going to have a governor that's going to come and speak at their convention, who also has put together an advocacy or a support group to look at gun violence in Texas that supported red flag laws. Let me tell you how dangerous red flag laws are. Because maybe you never heard of 61-year-old Gary J. Willis, a man from Ferndale, Maryland. Gary Willis, at 5 o'clock in the morning, had banging on his door from the Arundel County Police. Now, if you knock and banging on my door at 5 o'clock, the first thing I'm going to do is get something to make sure that I drop you. And that's the exact same thing that Gary J. Willis did. And he went to the door with his weapon. And then the police, no warrant, no anything, show up and tell him that they're there to confiscate and take away his weapons. Gary J. Willis reaches and raises his weapon. They shoot him dead. That's just November 2018. To this day, no one knows who signed the red flag order on Gary J. Willis. To this day, no one knows who the police officers that shot Gary J. Willis. And how dangerous is this? Senator Rick Scott, who used to be the governor of Florida, signed red flag laws into the law in the state of Florida. And if you don't understand what can happen when all of a sudden people can show up at your door because someone said that you may be a danger to yourself, you may be a danger to your neighbors, you may be a danger to your community, and at any time, without any warrant, confiscate your weapons, and then you have to go to court to prove that you're not a danger to get your weapons back, and oh, by the way, you have to pay for those court fees. That is what red flag laws are. And this thing that we are seeing happen in the United States of America, this thing that we are seeing even representatives in Texas advocate for, just remember that once upon a time, Adolf Hitler put Hermann Göring in charge of the Ministry of Interior in Germany. One of the first things that Göring did was establish a gun registry in Germany. So they knew where all the weapons were. And it was very easy to go out and take those weapons. One of the first things that Hugo Chavez did in coming to power in Venezuela was he made it unlawful for private gun ownership. The history of progressivism, socialism, Marxism, communism is always to disarm people because you cannot forcibly, by fear, intimidation, threats, and ultimately violence, implement a socialist agenda, a communist agenda, unless the people are disarmed.
Right.
And our founding fathers understood this, that an armed individual in the United States of America is a citizen. A disarmed individual in the United States of America is a subject. Right. There are only two places in this country where you will find a Declaration of Independence. One is for these United States of America. And on April the 19th of 1775, that was when it was established, the importance of the Second Amendment. That was when those patriots came out on Lexington Green, Dudley. And they said, we're not going to be subjects. Because the mission of the British, when they landed and they were marching inland, was to go to Concord, Massachusetts, and destroy a weapons and armaments factory that was supplying the Sons of Liberty and standing up and fighting for their freedoms and liberties against a tyrannical government. And 60 years after that, on October the 2nd of 1835, a Mexican cavalry showed up in a little town just south of here, not South Dakota, but south and down in Texas, at a place called Gonzales. And it was all about a little cannon that the people had to protect themselves from the Comanche raiders. And the Mexican cavalry said, we want the cannon back. And here, in the only other place in the United States of America where you will find the Declaration of Independence, they said, come and take it. And that goes back to the incredible stand of Leonidas and the 300 Spartans in 480 BC at a place called Thermopylae, when Xerxes and the invading Persian horde of 1 million told them on the first day of the battle to lay down your weapons. And Leonidas replied in 2 words in Greek, Molon, lave, which means come, take. But here we are in this present day in the United States of America. And if you think that the progressive socialist left is going to back off, if you think that we don't have people that quote unquote have an R after their names, that are right alongside with this, the founding fathers knew that your First Amendment freedoms, your freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof, your freedom of speech, your freedom of expression, wish we had freedom of a good press, right. Your right to petition government for redress of grievances. They understood that none of those First Amendment rights meant anything if you did not have an active right after it to protect that First Amendment right. Right. And this is where we are, looking at totalitarianism, looking at tyranny right here before us. So we got a challenge here. And one of the reasons why I'm so proud, and I showed them to Dudley and his vice presidents coming in here, I got 3 little membership cards from the National Association of Gun Rights and the Texas Association of Gun Rights, and one of them is a Frontline Defender, premium member. And you know what I like about the Texas Association of Gun Rights card? It says no compromise on it. That's what we have to do and stand for. Because how interesting it was that once upon a time after 9/11, the very first place that everyone wanted to go to, because they were fearful, they were scared, was the church. But 2 years ago during the COVID issue, what was the very first thing the government tried to shut down? Your very first liberty in your First Amendment, and that was churches. And we cannot allow that to happen again. When you look at what is currently happening in the United States of America, this whole thing about defunding the police, I cannot wear a police officer on my hip. That's why I choose to have my Glock 43X on my hip, okay? When you look at what is going on with them saying that we don't want felons to be kept in prison. We want to have these, bail relief reform laws, and we're releasing them. Look at what has happened in the state of Texas. The capital of Texas, Austin, Texas, has the 3rd highest increase in homicides in the United States of America. They defunded their police by $150 million. The city of Houston, Harris County, the largest county in the state of Texas, 3rd largest county in the United States of America, 155 Houstonians have lost their lives directly attributed to violent felons that activist judges have released and sent back out onto the streets. Why do you need to make sure you can have this? It's to protect yourselves. And who is most gravely affected? Those inner city minority communities. In the Black community, the Hispanic community, and oh, by the way, we have open borders, so we're allowing all these gang members and all of these other individuals to come in and threaten those people in those communities. That's why we need a National Association of Gun Rights. That's why we need a Texas Association of Gun Rights. That's why we need to tell people that the only permit that you need to have a firearm is this little thingy right here that I carry with me wherever I go. Because after you pass 4473, this be your permit. Now, if you want to make sure that you go out there and know how to use that thing, please go out and get some training, because none of y'all are Doc Holliday. But the thing is that you don't need that to be able to carry one of these. And that's what we have to stand up and fight for. This is about control. This is about power. And history, over and over again, especially in the 20th century, and even coming into the 21st century, has showed us that. The difference between the United States of America and Ukraine, just go back and remember the words that Admiral Yamamoto said, that there's no way we're going to attack the mainland United States of America because there's someone with a weapon behind every blade of grass. If Vladimir Putin had known that about Ukraine, maybe he would have stayed on the other side of their border. This is the fight for our children and grandchildren, on top of all the other things, the gender things, the grooming of our children. But the most important thing, the only way you can stand up and protect yourselves is that Second Amendment. And with the Second Amendment, there cannot be any compromise. There cannot be red flag laws. There cannot be any of these other things the government is trying to institute against us. So I'm begging you, I'm imploring you to continue to support this organization. Because sadly, the organization that I was once a board member for has lost its way. And we need to have other organizations to step up and to fill that void. And so I am honored to have this. And as soon as I get home, I'm gonna nail it into the wall and put it up. And I'll send you a picture, Dudley and Chris. So God bless you all, and thank you so very much for being here. And keep supporting me. Thank you.